Good afternoon, Patriots. This is the American Vision, broadcast on the TLBTV network and brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Project. I'm your host, Bill Muckler, and I'm coming to you from my home studio in Cocoa, Florida. And today I have a special guest, a friend, and an author from, and he's coming to us from Belize in Central America. So I want to welcome to the American Vision, Francis Mandewah. And Francis, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bill.
And Francis wrote a book, it's called Friendship. And I don't know, he can show the cover. I've got the cover up. I don't know how much of it is showing on my screen, but anyway, yeah, that's great. Okay. So anyway, Francis is from Sierra Leone and became an American citizen. And Francis, what I'd like for you to do is tell us a little bit about your early memories. And you wrote all this in your book, and your book is just captivating. I just loved every word on every page of it. So tell us about growing up and how you helped your mother and what you did to in a sense, work and make money?
Yeah, I was born in a small village in eastern Sierra Leone, in a region that was rich in diamonds. And this is the same region where the Hollywood movie Blood Diamond was filmed. Yet I came from an extremely very poor background. I came from a very, very small village, less than 20 people. Everyone there were all subsistence rice farmers. I come from a big family. I was the last of 5 children. We all live in my mother's mud brick house. We were extremely poor. So I grew up going to a Methodist primary school in my hometown. And after I finished at about grade 5, my mother sent me to live with a cousin about 20 miles away from my village in a diamond mining squatter camp so I can continue school. So basically, I come from an extremely very poor background. We hardly had enough to eat. And, my mother, my sisters, we all lived in the same small mud brick home. We had toilets outside of the house. And it was an extremely poor village, yet rich in diamonds.
And your mother was a very interesting person, and I'm at a loss for words to describe her, but she was, in a sense, like the village doctor or healer or nurse or something like that, because you used to go out and hunt with her in the forest for roots and things like that.
That's correct. My mother was a herbalist. My village did not have any facilities for health care. We were like 50 to 100 miles away from the nearest clinic. So my mother was a herbalist. She had knowledge of a variety of herbs, barks, roots, different kinds of medicinal herbs. So when people get sick in the village and people come to her for remedies. So, I'm sure you read in my book, there was a situation when this man fell off from tapping palm wine. The man had climbed the palm tree and accidentally, he fell down and broke his leg. My mother was able to go to the forest, and actually, I went with her. We got some roots and some barks, and she was able to grind that with some snake shells and some olive oil, and apply that whole medicine to the broken man's leg. And in about 2 weeks, the man was up and walking. That is what I remember of my mother's medicinal powers.
Yes, your mother was definitely an exceptional person, and I know from reading your book, she loved you so much that she sent you to the adjoining town, which you said I think was about 20 miles away, to live with your cousin and go to school. But you also worked, picking oranges. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Definitely. I was sent away to continue school with my cousin in the diamond mining squatter camp. This was an area that was huge, the size of Massachusetts, by the way, and this whole area belonged to the British people. And this whole area was actually saturated with diamonds, And so we lived in a squatter camp, with my cousin. And the plan was I was to continue, to go to school. But my cousin turned out to be very physically abusive. And Bill, you read my book, and you know the rest of the story. So now, actually, after the first year, I dropped out of school because I did not have anyone to pay my school fees. My cousin did not want to pay my school fees, so I was asked to begin to sell oranges. I carried the orange basket on my head. And of course, this was an area where there were like 250,000 miners, about 80% of the people were all from England, Australia, Germany. They were engineers. So this was a huge diamond mining booming area that was, I believe the company was actually owned by a British, American company. So my story goes, one day while I was selling my oranges, and Bill, you read my book, miraculously I met this tall white man. I believe he was in his late 20s, and he was an American. So my whole life began to change.
Yeah, and he was,
Tom Johnson.
Yeah, Tom Johnson was a helicopter pilot who was working for a company in Africa, transporting people and diamonds and everything. And so you were selling your oranges at the airport, and that's how you ran across him and immediately formed this this very unique bond of friendship with him. And we have a picture of him. This is the cover of your book behind me. So Tom Johnson actually wanted to, he saw something special in you, and he wanted you to continue your education. So he arranged for it with the Catholic school, with the nuns in that town, for you to go to school.
That's correct. Yes, Thomas Johnson was a pilot, and his job was actually to fly boxes of diamonds. I mean, this was an area that was so rich. Millions of diamonds were extracted from my hometown region every day. And, Captain Thomas Johnson's job was to fly boxes of diamonds from the mines to the international airport, where the British Airways jet would be waiting to fly the boxes of diamonds to London. So yeah, Tom Johnson met me one day, and it was very miraculous. And to this day, I still don't understand it. I turn it over to God. Why was I chosen? There were many other African children that were in the same desperate and destitute, situation. Why was I chosen that day is beyond me. But as a Catholic, as a person of faith, I thank God, and I am so grateful to Thomas Johnson for changing my life. So yeah, Tom Johnson actually changed the odds against me when he met me that day, when he chose to be my friend, when he chose out of his own goodwill and generosity to give me an opportunity to educate. Yeah, he took me to the Catholic school, and he introduced me to the Catholic nuns, and they were all Americans. And Bill, you know who they are because they are from St. Louis.
Yes, where I'm from, and actually from South St. Louis, where I'm from. So that is really quite a coincidence. That's something we have in common. So Tom arranged for you to go to school. He paid your tuition, and he had funds set aside for you that the nuns used. So you actually went to the school. It was almost like a boarding school where you actually stayed there with the other students. And you developed a very good friend when you were at that school. Would you like to maybe spend a moment telling us about him?
Definitely. You know, my life has changed. You know, I was living with a really physically, abusive cousin who beat me every day. I mean, I was beaten, I was starved. Everybody in the camp felt very sorry for me. I don't know why I was being abused by my own cousin. And all of a sudden, through the grace of God, my life changed when I met Thomas Johnson, who transformed my life. So he moved me to the boarding home. And, in the boarding home, I encountered bullying as well. The bigger boys were envious, jealous of me because they knew that I was being sponsored by a white man. And so life for me at the boarding school was also challenging. Yes, I had a friend who was a good friend. He looked out for me. And his mother was Caucasian. His father, an African from Sierra Leone. So we became good friends. We actually shared the same bunker bed. I believe, he was on top and I was down. And he actually, empathized with me. He was my closest friend, even when I was going through the bullying from the big boys.
Yeah, and so you and he tried to stay away from the bullies, and you hid things from them, and all that. So then, in the meantime, though, Tom Johnson was, and then I guess transferred to another area, and eventually you went to live with him and his wife. And before we get into that, I'd like to also mention that Tom Johnson was a Vietnam combat veteran who flew helicopters in Vietnam. And Francis has the original accommodation. Yes, he's holding it up right now. Francis's video isn't working, so he can't see what we're seeing, but that's perfect. So anyway, he has that accommodation from Tom Johnson, and he actually was decorated as a war hero in Vietnam.
That's correct, Bill. My friend Captain Thomas Johnson was a pilot in Vietnam. He volunteered, he served his country. I believe his father was in World War II. Tom Johnson comes from a strict conservative Christian family. And of course, they are Republicans, conservative, Republicans by political, affiliation. So yeah, he served in Vietnam, and he was shot down, and he managed to land the aircraft. And if I am allowed to read, he was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. Mm-hmm. And it's September the 20, 1970, award of the Distinguished Flying Cross, awarded date of service, July the 28th, 1970, Theater, Republic of Vietnam, authority, by direction of the President of the United States, under the provisions of the Act of Congress approved July 2nd, 1946. Reason for heroism while participating in area flight, evidenced by voluntary action above and beyond the call of duty in the Republic of Vietnam on July the 28th, 1970. Warrant Officer Johnson distinguished himself while serving as the pilot of an OH-6A light observation helicopter during a visual reconnaissance mission near the Laotian border in the Republic of Vietnam. When a helicopter was downed by enemy fire, Warrant Officer Johnson flew to search for survivors. He then proceeded to mark the hostile positions with smoke, despite intense enemy anti-aircraft fire. His effective location of insurgent emplacements enabled the army, enabled the enemy to be routed and the mission to be successfully complete. Warrant Officer Johnson's personal bravery and devotion to duty were in keeping with the highest traditions of the military service and reflect great credit upon himself, his unit, and the United States Army. For the commander, officials, signed by Hugh A. McDonald, Colonel, GS, Chief of Staff, Adjutant General, Distribution, 3-AVDG-AGP-B, 5A2, 17th CAV, 5-2, 17th CAV, 2 AVDG-IN, 2 AVDG AGP-O, 1 TAGO, attention, AGPL, Washington, D.C., 2010. So this is his original certificate of the Distinguished Flying Cross that he was given, that he was awarded for his heroism. And Bill, I also have to mention something, that speaking to his brother, Doug Johnson, and I did not know about this. Doug tells me that Tom was also awarded 2 Purple Hearts.
Which meant he was wounded in action 2 times. So he was definitely a hero to all of us, and he certainly was a hero to you. And he
was a very, he was a very kind and generous human being. He was one of the meekest and most humblest person that you could ever meet.
And like you say, and extremely generous, because he, in a sense, he adopted you in a way, and provided you your education and your opportunity to leave that area of Sierra Leone that you were in, which was the diamond area. And we talked about that, the area where the movie Blood Diamond actually took place. So then you left. Tom Johnson was transferred to another area, and you went to live with him. And then after a while, he arranged for you to travel to go to Europe. And so you had to go to Europe on your own. So you had to leave Sierra Leone and somehow get to Europe. And I would like for you to tell our audience a little bit about your journey, because at one point in time, you were in a town you almost died.
That's correct, Bill. The decision to go to Italy through the Sahara Desert from Ghana was my decision. In fact, you read a book, Tom Johnson was kind of shocked when I said to him and said, I want to go to Italy to work for one of your friends' family at a hotel. I want to go through the Sahara Desert. He kind of looked at me and said, what? Are you out of your mind? Don't you know that the Sahara Desert is a no man's land? I mean, I was so determined that I wanted to prove myself for him that I am worthy of his continued support to come to America. In a way, that was a personal test that I set up for myself. I wanted to prove to him that I am worthy of his support, that I am strong enough, that I am determined to endure and all of the challenges and trials that I knew that lay ahead of me. And he was kind of reluctant, but he went along with my decision, and he supported me. He gave me some money, and I also got some money from some of my friends in Europe. And then I began my trekking through the Sahara Desert.
What people in America don't understand is, in order to go from Ghana to Italy, you had to go all the way to the northern coast of Africa, the Mediterranean Sea, which meant you had to go through the desert. But there's no buses like we know of today. You actually rode in the back of stake trucks and with other people. That was a mode of transportation.
That's correct. My journey began from West Africa, northern West Africa, in the country of Ghana. And, I spent, a whole night and half day, to get into the next country of Mali, Bamako. And of course, it's all dirt road, and the vehicles, they call them lorries over there, are open air convoys. It's overcrowded. So that was the means of transportation, and it was dusty. It was not pleasant at all. The actual desert travel began from northern Mali, which, the Sahara Desert is one of the largest deserts. And going through the Sahara Desert is not fun at all. Sand, constant wind, the temperature drops extremely cold, about minus 10 degrees at night, cold, dry winds. And at night, the temperature goes up to 115, 20 degrees. And at night, the stars is lit with fiery stars, which kind of reminded me of in those days, in the early 1920s, when my hometown region was saturated with diamonds, before the white man came. Mm-hmm. So, that kind of comparison, going through the Sahara Desert was dangerous, but I was determined to get to Italy to work for an Italian family. This family were actually friends of Thomas Johnson.
Yes, and so when you arrived, I believe it was in Algeria, then you arranged to take a ferry, a boat over to Italy, and you met up with the family, and you worked and stayed with them for a while.
Yes, man, that was the beginning of the opening of the world to me. Here I was, a 19-year-old boy, alone, exploring, an unknown world. I was generous. I mean, I was so fortunate. This family, this Italian family, took me in and, you know, embraced me, absorbed me into the midst of their Italian family. This was a family who have never met me, but, you know, because they had an information from Tom's friend in Africa that I am on the way, I was accepted into the midst of the family. You know, when you talk about racial discrimination and, you know, I have my own views about it. Here I was in the midst of this white Italian family who did not know me, yet they treated me with respect and dignity and love. And I began to gain weight by eating spaghetti, you know, every other day.
And while you were there, you made a lot of friends. And one friend you met was a female named Gabby, and so you got to know her, and you traveled with her, and even ended up going to Greece and met new friends and new families there.
That's correct, Bill. Yes. You know, that was my very first encounter with a woman, you know, as a young man. She was very friendly. She was into traveling. You know, she had been traveling all along. So, you know, we became friends and we became intimate. And she took personal interest in me. And she said, well, come along, let's travel together. And I will take you to Greece. You know, we can work there on the orange farms. And this was by the time Greece had just joined the EEC or the EU. So there was plenty of work to be done there on the farms, picking oranges, olives, digging trenches on the farms. So yeah, it was an adventure with Gabi, my first girlfriend, who was German, white woman. And, you know, we became friends and I learned a lot from her. And we are still friends today.
Oh, that's wonderful. And from there, you eventually were able to get to the United States. So would you tell us about your journey to the United States? And you ended up in Massachusetts and was accepted in the college?
Yes. What happened was I have to obtain an American visa to come to America. And so my friend Tom Johnson this time was flying for another company, Chevron Oil Company. This was before the hostilities began in the South Sudan. So my friend had to come to Italy. You know, Tom told me to return to Italy so I can apply for a visa there. So he returned to Italy and went into the American embassy in Palermo, Sicily. And it's all in my book. It was an emotional sight, and I will let the readers find out. But through Thomas Johnson, who stood there as, you know, as an American, you know, as a soldier, you know, as a decorated soldier, he said to the American consulate, I am an American, you know, I'm a pilot, you know, I have served my country. I have been helping this black boy since I knew him 3-4 years ago. I am going to be responsible for his education. I want to give him a chance. Please give him the visa to go to America to study. Through Thomas Johnson, I was given the visa to come to this country. Once again, you know, Mr. Johnson is a Republican by political affiliation, a conservative. And here is a conservative white man who, out of his own goodwill and generosity, has gone out his way to spend his own money, to put his finances on the line, to give this black boy an opportunity to come to America. That's the story that I want Americans to know, to hear.
It's such a compelling story, and you wrote it so well in your book. And I'm sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead and go on, Francis.
Well, no, I mean, that's the nature of the story. And, my book has been adapted to screenplay. I wrote and published the book in 2016. And 2017, last year, the book was adapted to screenplay titled Diamond of Hope. And so far, the book, the screenplay is gaining momentum. Prominent international producers have taken interest in the screenplay already. And so I am in the waiting period. And I have gotten help from several prominent Christian faith-based, media consultants who have read my book and who have read my script, and they all agree that this is a story that needs to be told now here in America. So, in spite of what we are experiencing today with immigrations in America, in spite of what people say about conservative, Americans, there are many conservative Republicans, Christians, that are kind and generous, as evidenced by my story. Go ahead, Bill.
No, I agree, and that's such a powerful message, and that's I guess one of the many reasons I wanted to be able to talk with you on our show is that you had the opportunity then and to go to school in Massachusetts, and from there you got your degree, and then you ended up in Wisconsin, in the Milwaukee area, and you worked there as a probation officer for many years, and you eventually ended up back in I shouldn't say back, but you ended up in St. Louis, living in Ferguson, Missouri, which is where I lived for a long time in Ferguson. And when you were there, you also, the sisters that taught you, the nuns that taught you in Sierra Leone, actually were from St. Louis, and they came back to St. Louis, and you had the opportunity to be reunited with them in St. Louis. So tell us a little bit about that.
That was quite an emotional reunion. After over 35 years, these were nuns who knew me when I was 15 years old. And by the way, I have stayed in contact since then with one of the nuns who actually wrote the foreword to my book, Sister Roseanne Rustenmeyer. I don't have her picture right now, but I stayed in contact with her and the other nuns. So after like 35 years or so, I reunited with the same nuns who have known me for all these years. So it was quite an emotional reunion in 2016. I went to the convent, and I was surrounded by all of the nuns who have worked in Africa, school sisters of Notre Dame. And, they had a huge, reception there, and we first went to Mass, and after that, I was shown around, and it was quite an emotional reunion.
Yeah. Isn't it wonderful how all these things have happened to you in your life? Your mother sent you to another town for an education, and even though there were some difficulties and hardships there, that gave you the opportunity to meet with Tom Johnson, who was really a great influence in your life, and an American hero and a hero to you. And eventually you got to Italy, which got you to Greece, and then back to Italy to meet with Tom Johnson, who sponsored you and your visa to America, and got your tuition into school in Massachusetts. And so, but you also had a lot to do with this, because through your determination and your strength and your wanting to learn, you just got the opportunity and you met that challenge.
Definitely. I learned to endure and to face challenges, early in my life. And I went to school in the United States. I have a master's degree, and I worked for the Wisconsin Department of Corrections. I was a senior probation and parole officer at various locations in Wisconsin. And of course, the reality of the situation in the United States is that race relations is something that is a reality, and I had to endure that, and which actually created an ambivalence in me. Yet I came to the conclusion, I said, hey, not all people are bad. There are good and bad people.
Mm-hmm.
Here is, the white man who gave me all of the opportunity to come to this country. A white family who who showed me love and compassion, care, and gave me the opportunity to be what I am today. Yet, I faced situations that were racially motivated, but I came to the conclusion that no one country is immune from the challenges of diversity. And people have to understand to work towards that. To this day, I believe that, my friend Thomas Johnson, as a hero, I don't believe that all white people are indifferent, at all. As evidenced by my own very remarkable story with a white conservative Republican who, out of his own goodwill, transformed my life from war. I could have been caught in the Blood Diamond War. I could have been forced to join the army and carry an AK-47 and kill my own people. Yet Mr. Johnson gave me the opportunity to come to this country. He spent his own money. He was here. His family, his mother that you met through the book, his entire family, loving Christian family. So Wisconsin was a bittersweet situation, and that's where, that's, the way I find life. And so, I moved on with my life, and I came down to St. Louis, and I met with the School Sisters of Notre Dame nuns, and, I'm moving on with my life.
Yeah. And so, Francis and I were born thousands and thousands of miles away, and we ended up, and we didn't know each other then, but we ended up that we lived about a mile or so apart in Ferguson, Missouri. So, and that's how through the miracles of Facebook, which social media has its good and its bad as well, I was able to become a friend of Francis, and and found out about his book and got his book and read it, and that's how we've become friends. So Francis and friendship, those two words seem to go together, and you have such a remarkable story, and if you hold your book up, because I don't know if everybody can see it on here. The book is Friendship, and it has perfect. It has Thomas Johnson and Francis on the cover, and it's a true story. It's an adventure of goodwill and endurance. But also about the book is it reads just like a novel. Francis has written this book in such a way that it's just so enjoyable to read. I'm looking for the right words, because it was such a compelling read, an enjoyable read, and educational too, because I learned so much about what the people from a different country go through, because many of us in the United States, we maybe had our hardships and our difficulties and everything, but such a different culture. And yet here's Francis and I are able to, here I am in Cocoa, Florida. He's in Belize at present time. I think he's going to be up in Los Angeles about the movie Diamond of Hope. But here we are, and we're friends, and I'm just so blessed to be able to call you friend.
Thank you, Bill. You know, the title of the book is Friendship, a true story of adventure, goodwill, and endurance. And it has a picture of me and Captain Thomas Johnson. You know, the book is available at Amazon. It's also available at Barnes & Noble. And it's also available at my website, www.francismandewah.com. You only have to Google my name, and there's a lot of stuff on me on the internet.
I know that's amazing today, because even you can Google Bill Muckler even, so you can Google Francis. And of course, this video is going to be, it ends up, will be a YouTube video that will be embedded in the article. And we'll have all the information about the book and the website and everything. So all of you are watching this, I encourage you to go ahead and order Francis's book and read it, because you'll really be glad you did. It's such a great read.
It is very important to read the book before the movie comes out.
Yes, for sure.
I mean, you know, this is a story that people in the film business, people, you know, top producers, you know, top, you know, screenwriters, you know, they have made positive comments. I mean, one executive, an international, you know, independent film producer that is based in Los Angeles with offices in New Zealand and in Vienna, Austria, just read my script, and, you know, he wrote back saying, this is a fascinating story. The others have made similar comments. And I want to thank someone who has helped me really promote my movie online. Her name is Dr. Diane Howard. Dr. Howard is a journalist. You know, she's a media specialist. She is a performance, you know, specialist. She worked with the Movie Guide, and she's a publisher, and she's an author, and she's an editor, and she is a devout Christian. Dr. Howard discovered my book through my post at her Facebook site, Pro Films. And when my script was written, I contacted her, and Bill, she said, send me the script. She read the script within 2 days. Boy, she got on it. She said, this is the content that America needs during these trying times. And since then, Dr. Howard has been advocating and teaching my screenplay Diamond of Hope to the best of top faith-based producers. So I just want people to know about Dr. Diane Howard.
And I'm glad you mentioned her, because it's such a great thing that people have recognized your story, and I know that you've just developed these great friends throughout your life who are helping you and working with you. But Francis, you did it yourself, though. If it wouldn't have been for your determination and endurance, none of this would have actually happened, and we wouldn't actually be able to talk today. So anyway, I hope everybody just enjoyed meeting Francis and hearing his story. And of course, the best way to do it is to read the book, and be sure to read the book before you go see the movie, because and we're all going to look forward to that. And Francis, I hope that we can stay in touch. I know we talk on on Facebook, on Messenger or whatever that is, that where we can call each other. Actually, I can talk to Francis on Facebook, and he's in Belize and I'm in Florida. So what a world we live in now. And as we bring the close the gap between all those miles, let's hope that people in America can start closing the gap between ourselves, because we're all in this together. We're all humans together.
Thank you, Mr. Muckler, for giving me the opportunity to share my story with your audience and the entire people of America. My story is an evidence to show that there are kind and generous Americans who are not indifferent, who care about humanity, who care to restore faith and dignity in humanity. So I just want to say that I'm thankful to my friend Thomas Johnson, and I'm thankful to the great country of the United States. And I want to say one more thing. I believe in giving back. All my life as a public person, I have worked to be a motivation and inspiration in the lives of people. So I believe in public service. When I was a probation and parole officer, I helped people turn their lives around. When I work as a counselor in Illinois, I help people to rehabilitate from drug and alcohol. I believe in giving back the same way that it was given to me. So I believe in giving back to my fellow human beings. Thank you very much, Bill.
And thank you, and that I'm glad you closed with that, because we've all been given so much, and we should all remember that we also need to give, and giving is one of the great things that we have as being Christians. So Francis, God bless you, and thank you for being on the American Vision. Okay, boys and girls, I'm back. I hope you enjoyed meeting Francis and hearing his story. And I encourage you to get his book. This book is fantastic, and you can get it in print or in ebook. And like he said, you can go to his website, www.francismandewah.com or Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble or whatever. And if you want to learn more about Francis, you can visit his Facebook site, and or you can contact me and I'll help you with that. So I want you to get his book, and while you're at it, I'd like for you to get my book too. And I think we all learned a lot today. This is such a compelling story. And I'm looking forward to the movie. I'm certainly hoping that we'll get to see the movie soon, because I know the screenplay is an excellent work. So thanks again for watching. We'll have more coming up in the future, and another great show. And so again, God bless you, Francis, for being a guest and being the good friend you are. And God bless America. And God bless all of our active duty troops and our war heroes from Viet Nam, well, actually from World War II to present. And God save our America, because we need you now more than ever before.